Thank you. Again, Shabbat Shalom. Let me find just a couple books here. All right. We're going to look at a few scriptures first. Where we want to go is to the book of Shemot, Exodus, chapter 25. And we're going to pick up two verses here. This will be verse 8 and verse 9. I'm using just a New King James right now. I'll switch over to a Hebrew Tanakh at times. But it says, "And let them make me a sanctuary, a mikdash, a house of kedusha, that I may dwell, that I may shekan among them, according to all that I show you." That is the pattern of the Mishkan. Now, the word that we have here for pattern is going to be a very powerful word in Hebrew. I don't like the word pattern. I don't like the word form. These are words in English that have no impact. The actual word tavnit, spelled T-A-V-N-I-T. Can we get a whiteboard set up? Tavnit means a blueprint. Now, when you have blueprints, you have exactness. And that is what's going to be required. Now, I just want to read just a little bit more here. It says, "And the tavnit, or the blueprint of all its furnishings," and it says, "just so that you shall make it." You know, in Hebrew, where it says, "just so shall you make it," it's preceded by a letter that was not translated here. It is the letter Vav, which means and. Yes. All right, tavnit for you. Right. Y'all want it moved over a little bit? I'll have to look at it. Deanna, you know how to spell tavnit? What is it? Wait, I can't hear you. Y'all know Deanna Dye. She is, or Dina Dye now, right? We go back a long ways. She is a temple scholar in her own right. It has a new book coming out. She has another book that's been very popular. Okay, so tavnit. Okay, it's a blueprint though. Now, what the Vav, where it says in verse 9, it says, "just so shall you make it." In Hebrew, it actually would translate, "and just so shall you make it." Now, that Vav becomes very important because it makes it a continuing tense. And Rashi wrote that it did not just apply to the people in the wilderness, it applied to every generation, including ours. It is a command for us today. Now, in the Parsha today, we saw that he specifies that you cannot have the temple at other locations, but at the place that he would rest his name, the place that he would put his name. And he was specific on this, repeating it over and over and over again. That this is where you will bring your burnt offerings and all your various offerings. You'll bring your masarot, your tithes. You'll bring your turabot, the free will offerings. That all the ceremonies that are to be conducted will be conducted at this place. So we all agree, I believe we all agree, that it has to be in the place that he chose. We don't have the option to move that place. So it becomes critical for us to determine where that place is. Now, most people would say it's going to be in Jerusalem. I have heard some say that it's in Shiloh. In Jeremiah, it says, "Go and look." He's speaking to Jerusalem, "at Shiloh, where I placed my name first." But later he calls for it to go to Jerusalem. And so let's get just a little background on this place. We're going to go to the Akedah. In the services that we go through daily, you'll have frequently where it will say that you recite a certain verse numerous times. It might say that you recite, there's one that's in the morning prayers that is going to be right after the Akedah. The Akedah is Genesis chapter 22, the binding of the sacrifice at Mount Moriah. And it has 5 verses, and the first 3 you repeat 3 times. No, you repeat 3 times. You say it once and repeat twice. Okay. It's 3 times you say it, okay? All right. Now you see why Debbie's with me, okay? All right. So why is that done? We're coming up to Rosh Hashanah, Yom Torah. We have the shofar service. You're going to say Psalm 47 7 times. One time and repeat it 6 more, okay? In a row. You say, wow, that's monotonous. That's like vain repetition. No, it's not. It's to get your attention. It is, this is important.
Almost
he wants you to catch it.
Really,
and so it's repeated
many
because of its
TVN
emphasis.
And
all right, now, we have lots of passages we do every day of our lives.
To me,
the Shema.
Not only
we do
pleasure,
it multiple times in the day. We have other passages that we do every day of our lives. But there is only one chapter that we read every day of our lives. And that's Genesis 22. That's the Akedah. It's read from the time that you're old enough to read to the time you die. You go through the Akedah every single day. So, chapter 22. I'm going to just summarize this, but he's told, it starts off and he says, now it came to pass after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, here I am. I've always loved that. The word in Hebrew is hineni, which means here I am, okay? Here I am. A lot of times when God calls to us, we say, what do you want? So I love his attitude. Oh, yeah, just a minute. Wait a second. I'm busy. I'm texting, okay? Genesis 22. So he tells him to take his son, his only son. And it's going to have 3 times in there that it refers to his only son. And go to the land of Moriah. Go to the land of Moriah. And to offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I shall show you. Okay? So we have in Jerusalem, there's going to be 3 primary mountains in the ancient city, which will be one that was outside of the city, but so linked to the city that it was considered a part of it, which is the Mount of Olives, the eastern mountain, the middle mountain, which is Mount Moriah, and then the western mountain, which is Mount Zion. So the 3 mountains, it says, but he doesn't say, go to the city of Salem, which we already know it was called that, from back in chapter 14, where Abraham fought against the 5 kings, against the 4 kings, and he paid the tithes to Melchizedek. All right? So first question is, why does it say the land of Moriah? Why does it say, go to the community of Salem? Second thing is that on one of the mountains of which I shall show you. Now, the word har is the word har, means mountain. But it also means the peak of a mountain. So it says, go to the land of Moriah, to one of the harim that I will show you. It's very interesting because, for instance, Mount Nebo, which is in Jordan, which is where Moses was buried by the angel. There are 2 peaks at Mount Nebo, and he was buried on one of the peaks. Mount Moriah has 3 peaks. So the three peaks are going to be what we call the Temple Mount, the Antonia Mount, or Antonia Hill, and Golgotha. And it actually makes, I've got some maps here I can show you, but the mountain makes a little jog like this. So there's a peak here, there's a peak here, there's a peak here, and then it goes down, and you're going downhill all the way to the Hino Valley at the very south. Okay, so now this, what we're going to try to find is where exactly is the Temple Mount. That's the controversial thing. So he's told to offer him there, and it said, in the mount of the Lord it will be seen. He's built to build an altar at that location, and in the mount of the Lord it will be seen. Now we're going to jump forward to 1 Samuel in chapter 24. Excuse me, 2 Samuel. I'm going to just tell you the story here because we'll come back to look at it in a few minutes. In 2 Samuel 24, David sinned. He got lifted up in pride. And so God is going to send a judgment on him. And he's given his choice of 3 judgments. And he picks, I'm going to place my hands in the hand of the Lord. Or he's going to place the judgment in the hands of the Lord. And he sends an angel over the city. And he's told to go up and build an altar at the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. Now, in 2 Chronicles chapter 3, in 2 Chronicles chapter 3, we have verse 1. Now, Shlomo, Solomon, began to build the house of the Lord at Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where the Lord had appeared to his father David, at the place that David had prepared on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. Okay, so it's exactly at the same location. Now we're going to go forward to the book of Ezra. I don't know about y'all. I actually use the Tanakh more often than I use a non-Jewish published Bible. And I find myself going this way when I'm in the Tanakh when I should have been going this way, and vice versa when I switch, because the books are not lined up the same. Go to chapter 5. In chapter 5, we're going to go to, and so, let me find the verse. Verse 15, and he said to him, take these articles, go carry them to the temple site that is in Jerusalem, and let the house of God be rebuilt on its former site. So we have a continuity from the altar that Abraham built to the altar that David built to Solomon constructing the first temple, and Ezra, Nehemiah, Zerubbabel, Yehoshua ben Jehozadak are going to come back from the Babylonian captivity, and they rebuild the temple. What we have so far, all of it's at the same site. And this will be a requirement which we read in our portion today. You can't move it. It has to be at that precise location. Now, I'll tell you, I had a meeting in February with Rabbi Richmond from the Temple Institute, and what I briefly presented to him, I've got a meeting with him coming up in November. What I briefly presented to him is that we now can locate the exact location of the building, of the temple building, to, I believe, within a quarter of an inch. Okay, we've got that precise in what we've been able to discover, that we can locate where the building was. All right? So, Now, I'm going to switch caps. That was my Shabbat cap. That was my speaking cap. But this is me. And now I want to get where we go forward. Could the temple have been located in the city of David? I want to read something to you. I got a text the other day, about maybe 3 weeks ago at the most, that a video had come out of YouTube that was titled Urgent 2017 Rebuilding the Third Temple is Beginning. Any of you have seen this video? Deanna's seen it. Nobody else has seen it. Okay? I was shocked on two matters. Number one is that the video came out in June. And at the time, the last time I looked at it, it had either 725,000 or 795,000 views. I can't remember which one. Either way, it's off the radar. I mean, it's a real amount of views for any video to have within less than 8 weeks. That's unreal. Years ago, there was a book that came out. This is the book. It's called The Temples That Jerusalem Forgot by Dr. Ernest Morton. I purchased the book when it came out. I read it. About 3 years ago, a second book came out. And I had actually seen at that time several videos, several YouTubes that were up. But it was called Could History Be So Stunningly Wrong? Temple. Amazing New Discoveries That Change Everything About the Location of Solomon's Temple by Robert Cornuke. Now, I went down to Barnes and Noble's to get this book. I had a friend from Israel, who's Orthodox, that comes, stays at our house and speaks at my office. He's not a believer in Yeshua, but he comes and does quite a bit with us, and you might be familiar with him. His name is Hanok Young. Hanok came to the house. He said, "You got to read this book." Well, I'd already seen the videos. I go down to Barnes and Noble, and I said, "I want to buy this book." And they said, "Well, we don't have it. It's out of stock." So I said, "Well, can you order it for me?" And they said, "No, the warehouse is out of stock." So I said, "Well, how long will it be?" And they said, "We really don't know. Every time they print, they're sold out immediately." All right? So if this is good information, then that's great. But if the information is not good, that's a horror story. Okay? Because we have a command that we have to be at the correct place. And so let me ask you a question. Now, I don't want to attack these authors, okay? I want you to understand my heart. I'm not trying to attack. What I want to do is I want to deal with the information. And I want us to look at the information and see. I'm going to summarize in a few moments basically what they're saying. Some of you might be familiar, others maybe not. But by any stretch of the imagination, we're not going to be able to cover all that they have in these books in the hour and a half to 2 hours that we have here. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's Urgent 2017 Rebuilding the Third Temple is Beginning. Now let me say something. Yes. Yes. How much? 808 views? 808,000 views. Okay? Like I said, if this is good information, that's great. But if it's not, I'm going to tell you, if you do not know your material on the temple, you'll watch the video and go, "Wow, that's fantastic." But if you really know the temple, you'll see flaws from the very beginning. All right? Here's a question. Here's a question. Which is more dangerous? A total lie or a half-truth? Half-truth. Yes, it's deadly. It's deadly. A half-truth is deadly because it has that degree of truth that people can see and go with it. And that's dangerous, okay? So, let me put this to the side. Tell you what, can I get a couple guys to move that over closer to me? I'm going to hold the coffee, so if y'all could, coffee's really going to be important here. All right, thank you. All right, so from the book, by the way, I ended up purchasing the book, Cornuke's book. I ended up purchasing it as an ebook. And I have it on a Nook at home. I read it, I took notes on it, and the only thing is we lost the power supply, and so for the present time I don't have that. I really wanted to have the book as I went around to speak and to show people. And here's something that I want to make sure is that you feel the freedom to stop me, ask me questions. It might be that we don't have time to go into it, but I do hope that I'll be able to give you the information where you will be able to look it up for yourself. I have brought all kinds of books to show you so that you can see the sources, you can look for yourself and not have to just take what I say as opposed to what someone else says. Okay, but I had some friends in Ohio that have been with us to Israel. They've been to several of the temple tours that Deanna, Enrico, and I have done. And they've come down and visited with us at our home in the Shavuot at our services. And anyway, they originally followed this book. They originally followed it. But when they got to looking at what it was saying and looking at the actual on-site evidence and so forth, they decided, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to follow this anymore. She had bought a bunch of these books to give away. So she said, I'll send you one. And it arrived Tuesday about 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon. I taught at 7 that evening, the message I'm going to show you. And then we left at 4 the next morning to come here. Okay, so I haven't had a chance to integrate this into the slides. But I did take Dr. Martin's. So if we could go forward. This is on page 3, Dr. Martin's book. It says, but look at the simple facts. This is in his introduction. Since everyone now knows that the Mount Zion of King David's time was located in the southern part of Jerusalem on its southeast ridge. Now again, how many of you have been to Israel? Several, but a number of you haven't. Is that statement true? Yes, it's true. At the time of David, now I'm going to go forward, we're going to come back to this. This is a map. The first map, it was done by Professor Benjamin Mazar. Professor Mazar was the head of the excavations at what we call the southern steps in the southwestern corner, immediately following the Six-Day War, when Israel gained that territory. The excavations continued up into the 1980s. Towards the latter part of it, his granddaughter, who was an archaeologist, joined with him as co-director. Her name will be Eilat Mazar. This map is from Eilat Mazar. So this one is earlier. And here we have the city of David. Now, the city of David was originally a Jebusite city. And so the Jebusite city went from the southern edge down here This is going to be the Kidron Valley. This is the Toropim Valley. And coming this way is the Hidon Valley. Okay, so the Jebusite city went approximately to right here. Did not go further north. We have what are called the Spring Towers at the Gihon Spring, and that is going to be the northern extent of the Jebusite city. So David conquers the city. He's going to build a palace north of the Jebusite city. But it is basically his southern wall of his palace is going to butt up to the northern wall of the Jebusite city. So much so that he could take an egg and drop it from his palace and it would hit in the Jebusite area. Okay, do you understand? So you don't have a lot of room in the entire, what we call, all of this now we call the city of David, Ir David, from here to here and going across is only 14 acres. Now, at its shortest, its narrowest location, it is about 150 yards across it. It's not very wide at all. So it's a ridge. And so, yes, Mount Zion was, at the time of David, right along this ridge. Now, Mount Zion, or Zion, not Mount Zion. There's a difference between Zion and Mount Zion. By the way, just a little thing in Hebrew. Zion in Hebrew is a slang curse word. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's not a good one. So we choose to use the Hebrew word Zion, which means mountain of God. Now, Jerusalem has multiple names. I noticed in one of your slides, Dennis, that you had a lion over the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was called Ariel, the Lion of God. King David was called Ariel, and so was the temple called Ariel. You have multiple names for all this. It's also called Sion. It's also called Moriah. Our best friend in Israel has two children. Her son is called Ariel, the Lion of God, and her daughter is called Moriah. And when you ask her, why did you name them this? She said, I named them after Jerusalem. Now, in Hebrew, we have what's called Hebrew parallelism. Very frequent. It'll be found everywhere in the Scripture. Everywhere. So what is Hebrew parallelism? It means on your first line, you're going to make a statement, and then you're going to repeat it with different words in the second line. I'll give you an example, my favorite. It's talking about Messiah. I behold him, but not... I can't believe this. I behold him, but not near. I see him, but not now. You see how those are parallel? A star shall rise out of Jacob, a scepter out of Israel. You say, where's the parallel there? Well, the scepter of the king had a pomegranate on it. And the pomegranate had a star on top. And so the emblem of the kings of Judah were the six-pointed star. That's where it originates from, is from the scepter of the king, the pomegranate star on the top of the scepter. So, of course, this is going to be used greatly in reference to the birth of Yeshua and so forth. But it will use over and over sealed as a synonym for the city of Jerusalem. Now, when Solomon, does David build the temple? No. He's not allowed to. He's a man of war. But he tremendously prepares for it. Does Solomon build the temple? What do you think is going to happen when they build the temple? I'll tell you what's going to happen. Population boom. Because you're going to have thousands of workmen come, and those thousands of workmen are going to have to eat a lot of food and buy a lot of clothing. They're going to have housing. There's going to be new industry that's picking up because you're going to be having thousands of animals that will be brought in, which means you're going to have feed for the animals. So all of a sudden, Jerusalem has a population explosion with the building of the temple. And we know, if you'll go to chapter 22 of Isaiah, we know that they had extended to the western hill. The western hill. And that hill we call Mount Zion. That's where the Jewish quarter is and so forth. Now, in the Jewish quarter, you want to see everything. There isn't a stone in that place that isn't important. So we have one of the most important places to locate when you go to the Jewish quarter, and I'm not trying to be funny here, but it's the restrooms. Okay, there's only two. There is going to be one when you're heading towards the stairway to take you down to the Kotel and the Temple Mount. But the other is going to be up by what we call the Cardot. And so when you go from the square, the big square, and you go around and you're going to go to the restrooms, and it'll take you to the Cardot, you're going to pass this great big wall that's called the Broad Wall. Now, the Broad Wall was built in the days of King Hezekiah. The reason it's called the Broad Wall is it's broad. It's thick. Before, at the time of Solomon, if you go to Megiddo, for instance, or Hatzor, or Gezer, these are cities built by Solomon. They use a type of wall that's called a casemate wall. So a casemate wall, if I could just show you, it's going to have a stone that starts right about here where the tile starts, and it will come back maybe 3 feet, and then it has a hollow space. And then it'll have a stone coming down this side and a stone coming down that side, and another stone about 3 feet. Now that was great for the days of Solomon. That's going to be the late 10th century, early 9th century BCE. Because the enemies, the powerhouses, were already using battering rams, but they were very crude. And the casemate wall held it back. But by the time of the 8th century, the Assyrians have developed a better battering ram. And they'll crash through a casemate wall in just a few minutes. And so now the countermeasure is build a broad wall. It'll take them a while. Now, here in chapter 22 of Isaiah, we're going to go to the 8th verse, and it says, he removed the protection of Judah. Actually, what it says, he moved the covering of Judah. It's going to be, actually, it's talking about a temple building. You looked at that day to the armor of the house of the forest. That is a reference to what we call in Hebrew, the Beit Yair HaLebanon, the house of the forest of Lebanon. Now, the house of the forest of Lebanon, and remember this, it is going to be the building that joins the temple of God to the palace of the king. Look right here. Professor Mazar, he has the temple, and on the Temple Mount, he has the palace. That is the palace of the Judean kings after Solomon. David's palace is going to be down here in Ir David. We'll study about it in a moment. So it goes on, and it says, you also saw the damage to the city of David, that it was great, and you gathered together the waters of the lower pool. That's the Shiloach. You numbered the houses of Jerusalem, and the houses you broke down to fortify the wall. Now, if you go, and when you go to Jerusalem next time, be sure to do this. Go look at the broad wall. You're going to see at the very bottom, there are houses sticking out of the wall. It's a direct fulfillment of this verse. Those houses are dated to the late 10th century BCE, the time of Solomon. Solomon's Jerusalem had extended over to the western mountain. Population explosion. Back years ago, you know, I'm from Texas. I'm from about 70 miles east of Texas, almost to the ocean and almost to Louisiana. And so Houston was originally built right about the time of the Texas Revolution, and it was a little bitty town. And you could walk across it, I would guess, in less than 5 minutes. But then the Texas Revolution was over, and for a while, that was the capital of Texas, and they had a population explosion. So it came bigger. Now, they didn't say that just that original part was Houston, or the Bayou City, or any other names that it had. Today, we have what is called Greater Houston. Going from the east to the west is 35 miles across. Going from the north to the south is 40 miles across. Now, you have the actual Houston city limits, and then you have all these towns around it. Jerusalem had the same thing. So we call the towns around Jerusalem Bat Yerushalayim. These are the little towns like Bethpage, Bethany, Beit Lakim, and so forth. So we're going to come back to this. So what I'm saying is, as Jerusalem expanded, the term Sion expanded. They were synonymous terms. It's true at the time of David, but as we go forward, we are able to establish this, for instance, like from the book of Lamentations. Debbie?
Can you show an approximation with this map of where this kind of broad wall would be?
Well, just a second. Not on this map. It's not in this map.
I mean, like over to the side.
It's going to be over here. Right over here. It's in the city of David. It's right, if you know the shop Shorshim, it's right behind it. Okay. So, the broad wall, by the way, is mentioned in the book of Nehemiah, chapter 3. All right, let's go back. We're going to pick up the rest of this right here. It says it was located in the southern part of Jerusalem on its southeast ridge. This means that the temples would have to be located immediately north of what was called the Ophel. Write that down, O-P-H-E-L, Ophel. In the scriptures, but on a third of a mile north to the Dome of the Rock. That's right, that distance is going to be right. This well-known geographical fact signifies that the real site of the temples was a few yards or meters west of the Gihon Spring, about a third of a mile south of the Dome of the Rock, now situated within the enclosure of the Haram Esh Sharif. The Haram Esh Sharif is what the Muslims call the top of the Temple Mount. It means the noble sanctuary. It is the place that the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque are located. So I want to go forward again. So here, this is what we call the Temple Mount. This is what the Muslims call the Haram Esh Sharif. You can see the Dome of the Rock. Right here is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, immediately to the south, whether you agree or disagree, this is what they're going to be called, okay? So immediately to the south is called the Southern Steps. And there's two stairways. One that will lead into a gate located right here, and one that will lead into a gate right there. All right, then, you see where this red dot is? That's the Ophel. That is the Ophel. And right here, that's what it says is Ophel, right where the little black starts. There is a wall that was discovered by Elat Bazar. She also discovered a gate that was called the Water Gate of the Ophel. In addition, back in 1868, so over 100 years ago, Captain Charles Ward of the Palestine Exploration Fund discovered a building next to what would be the water gate. He didn't discover the water gate. It had too much debris on top of it, but he discovered what was called the projecting tower. Now, these are going to be listed as part of the Ophel in Nehemiah or Nehemiah 3, all right? So here in the 1960s, the late 60s, we have our first excavations down in the city of David. They're going to be done by a British lady named Kathleen Kenyon. And so it's going to mark, this is Kathleen Kenyon's, I think, section A. everything's going to be gridded. Okay, so you're going to have section A, section B. This is also canyons right here. See these red dots? Now here, she discovers what is called a stepped stone structure. Write that down. We're going to see pictures of it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to see how this thing develops. The stepped stone structure, they didn't know what it was for. But it started down in the Kidron Valley and came up to the top of the ridge. Okay? So here, this is the Gihon Spring. Right here. You see this red dot? Now, understand that y'all, where I live, it's flat as can be. But here you've got mountains. And you understand that this spring out here is going to be just down the hill. Y'all understand that? So it's not like it's way, way over there. It's right here. It's just down. It's down in the valley. So here's the Gihon Spring. Now, both Morton and Carnook are going to make the claim that the Gihon Spring is the only water source for Jerusalem and that the temple had to get its water from the Gihon Spring. Doesn't agree with the information. It doesn't agree with the text we have. The water for the Temple Mount did not come from the Gihon Spring. It rather came from what was called the Eitam Spring. E-I-T-A-M. We have, in fact, there is a whole water system that dates to before the time of Yeshua that was designed to bring water from the Eitam Spring to the temple, and a massive aqueduct system. In addition, we're going to have what is called right here, there was a fortress. This fortress was built at least by the Hasmoneans. There's a possibility that it was there even in the first temple period. But we know of it from the time of the Hasmoneans. Anybody here not know what the Hasmoneans are? Everybody knows what the Hasmoneans are? Okay. I'm glad. Y'all tell me if you don't know something, okay? You're going to have the first temple period. That's going to be from Solomon to King Zedekiah. And then they're going to be defeated by the Babylonians. The city's burned. The temple's destroyed. People are carried into captivity to Babylon. Then they're going to return. After several years, they'll return. And we call that the Persian period. Doesn't mean they're Persians, but the Persians let them come back. And so that's going to be the time of Ezra, Nehemiah. The governor is going to be Zerubbabel. And the high priest is called Yehoshua ben Yehosadak. They're going to rebuild Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. So we call that the second temple. So the second temple has 3 phases. It's going to go through, the Persian period ends when Alexander the Great, the Greek, arrives on the scene. Now, he's going to die. He divides his kingdom between 4 of his generals. 2 of them relate to Israel. One is going to be the Seleucids up in Damascus, and the Greeks, or the Ptolemies, down in Egypt. So they're going to fight back and forth, and Israel's between the 2 of them. Finally, we get to the really bad one. That's Antiochus Epiphanes IV. He's the villain of Hanukkah. The Maccabees rise up against him. Now, his name is Yehuda HaMaccabi, Judah the Maccabee. He is the son of Shimon Hasmonai. So his family are called the Hasmoneans. And he has 2 brothers that will be killed after he's killed. His 3rd brother, Shimon Hasmonai, is going to be high priest, and he makes himself prince of the people. He's going to have a son, Yochanan Hyrcanus, who's going to take the title king and high priest. Then he's going to have a son, Alexander Yudai, and he takes the title king and high priest. He dies. His wife takes over for 7 years, Alexandra. She has 2 sons, the good son and the bad son. The good son is named Hyrcanus, but he's a weakling. He's a mama's boy. His brother, he's a bike rider. okay? He's like a hell's angel, and they don't trust him, they don't like him, and he will take anything he can get by power. His name is Aristobulus. So she hires a strong-arm man to protect Hyrcanus. His name is Antipater. Antipater is an Edomian, meaning he's an Edomite. During the time of Yochanan Hyrcanus and Alexander Eunae, they conquered the Edomites and forced them to convert to Judaism. So Antipater has a son, Herod. And Herod eventually takes over. But the period from the time of the Maccabean revolt all the way to the time of Herod, we call the Hasmoneans. Okay? That make it clear? So then we have Herod comes along. He's going to rebuild the temple and everything. The Hasmoneans actually enlarged the temple. Shimon Hasmonai will enlarge it to the south. And then Herod enlarges to the south, to the west, and the north. Okay, now, here we have, this is the Tyropian Valley, this is the Kidron Valley. So here is the Gihon Spring. By the way, I was going to tell you, there is the fortress of the Hasmoneans called the Boris. Herod will come and he rebuilds the Boris and renames it the Antonia. There is a water channel that brought water into the Boris. That water came from up here in the north. We don't know where it came from. We don't know the name of the spring, but it did come from the Gihon Spring. Also in the letter of Aristeas. And in the letter of Aristeas, which is going to be written in the Hasmonean period by a Jewish man sent from the king of Egypt, the Ptolemy II, he comes and he makes a record of the temple. And he states that the water source of the temple was outside the city of Jerusalem. The Gihon Spring is a part of the city of Jerusalem. And he even states that they took him out to it. Okay? So it is a myth that the water for the temple came from the Gihon Spring. All right, now, from the Gihon Spring, here it is. So I'm going to come up here on the top. From about right here, remember that Dr. Martin said it's going to be several meters west or yards west of the Gihon Spring. So we're going west here. This is west. And at the top, and it's going to extend to the Ophel, right here. That area. All right, everybody agree with that? Do you see what I'm saying? Let me go back. I'll read that real quick. It says that they have to be located immediately north of what was called the Ophel in the scriptures. And then this well-known geographical fact signifies that the real site of the temple was a few yards or meters west of the Gihon Spring, about a third of a mile south of the Dome of the Rock, now situated within it. Okay, so let's go forward. All right, I want to show you something. All right. This is an article from Biblical Archaeology Review. If you're not a member of it, I would encourage you to become.
What issue?
This is going to be from Biblical Archaeology Review 23-1, January, February 1997. If you belong to their archive, it costs you $50 a year. You can look up any article that is in any of their publications. And it's well worth it, okay? So this is written by Eilat Mazar. Now, Eilat Mazar is the granddaughter of Benjamin Mazar, and she's one of Israel's greatest archaeologists right now. And the title of the article is called Excavate King David's Palace. Now, what she did was she took her Tanakh, based on the Tanakh, not based on any archaeological evidence. I'm going to pass this around. Just make sure I get them back, okay? So, y'all can look through them and pass them on around and everything. But the based upon what she read in the Tanakh, it says that David built a palace. And she is going to, it will say that it will be north of the Jebusite city, on the ridge adjoining to it. So what she did basically is she read and she said, okay, according to the scriptures, King David's palace should be right here. Now the article is absolutely fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating. But it got a lot of attention. So various organizations, foundations, even universities raised the money for her to excavate there, because to find David's palace would be a major coup. Everybody wanted to have their name associated with it. So she comes back, she goes in, and she starts to excavate. This is another article by Eilat Mazar. This is from January, February 2006. Did I find King David's palace? Lo and behold, I want to show you a book by Eilat Mazar. You can purchase this at the gift shop at the city of David. It's called The Palace of King David. Excavations at the summit of the city of David. Preliminary report of seasons 205, 207. Okay? So, she goes down. She cannot really say for 100% it's David's palace. To do that, she would have to find a sign saying David slept here or something equivalent. Okay? However, she found a palace. She found what would be found in a palace, the type of columns, and columns are going to change. Everybody knows what I'm saying by column, right? Columns are going to change from one period to another, and then they have what are called the royal columns. And they found literally the royal columns right there. You can actually see this on the front cover. We have some of the decorations that you only find in royal structures. And lo and behold, they found them there. I'm going to jump forward. Yes. Why don't you stand up and you can show that real quick and people can look at it when they come by. Yes. Yes, sir.
And those decorations are going to be specific to that particular time.
Yes, they are dated to that time. So, I mean, this is very strong. I want to show you. I hope I show you. I don't think so. I can't move forward. It's in the back. There we go. All right, here. We're going to jump forward. That's the stepstone structure. See it? And we'll talk more about it, but I want to show you the palace real quick. I'm kind of jumping ahead. This is what she found. Now, look at this. See that individual standing there? It looks like this little miniature figure. They took pictures. I've got 3 pictures. These are pictures from Eilat Mazar. Okay, I took them from the article out of Bar, but they are to give you a perspective of how big this. It's called the large stone structure. It's its legal name. Here we have a lady sitting down. Look at this one. Look at this guy standing. I think that might be a girl. Yes. Now, those are all going to be from the Boer article. And I put this together, all of this presentation, I put it together in one day. Okay, so I'm going to go back and work on it. But this is massive. It's gigantic. Okay, we're going to drop back, pick up a little bit more. It says, the fact is, this is back Morton's book, page 5, the temple as revealed in the historical records was not located near or within the Haram Esh Sharif. Now, I disagree with that. But for the sake of looking, let's just go forward and see what we find. The actual temple of Herod was located over the Gihon Spring. Now I'm going to show you how you can know it cannot be, that it would be impossible for it to be there. It could be other places, but not there. So, and on the southeast ridge of Jerusalem, it was so destroyed that modern archaeologists will not be able to discover any remnants of it within the confines of its former site. They will not find even its foundation stones that were once strongly positioned in place. This is because Jerusalem and the interior and exterior walls of the Temple of Herod were totally demolished down to the bedrock in the Roman-Jewish War of 66 to 70 Common Era. Only a few important Roman buildings continued to exist after that war. Among those Roman remains is the Haram Sharif. Remember, that's what we call the Temple Mount. There was once an imperial administration center that the Romans sustained and used for another 200 years. So let's go forward. This is an illustration at the back of Morton's book. Right here. Right here. I just put it on a slide for you. So basically, let's talk about it. Both Morton and Carnook will claim, based on several things, they are going to claim that the Temple Mount is not the Temple Mount, but rather it was a Roman fortress called the Antonia. Okay? And that to support this, that they will point out that there were a legion was stationed there, and it's true that a legion was stationed there at times. At other times, it was a cohort. Now, a legion is going to have between 5,000 and 6,000 men, and there are going to be auxiliaries that will also have to supply the legion, and they give a number of 10,000 or so. I don't have a problem with that. I would say that could be accurate, okay? The temple, one thing that immediately is out of perspective is that we have numbers and numbers and numbers of references to the huge size of the temple of God. And certainly it had to be. I was reading in Josephus this morning. In fact, I'll see if I can find it for you. It's going to be in Wars of the Jews, book 5, I believe. I'll need to check. Do you remember that reference? That Josephus claimed that there was 2.5 billion worshipers present at the Passover when the Romans circled the camp. Now, how many of you live outside of Albuquerque? How many of you live at little bitty towns outside of Albuquerque? Okay, a number of you. That's pretty common in this section of the country. And so where do you go in order to do your business? Most of those towns don't have a lot of the businesses you need. You go into town, and so you have a greater population area that flows into the population center. And so, same thing. You had, for a festival, you had all of the occupants of the land, all of the Jews in what we call Eretz Israel, or have an immediate command 3 times in the scripture to go up to Jerusalem. But you have Jews that are coming from Babylon, where your biggest Jewish population was. You have Jews coming from Egypt, where your second largest Jewish population was, as well as Jews that are coming out of Asia Minor and Europe, like we read about Paul. And they're all coming up to keep the festival, so the city is going to swell at that time. And in that particular year, the Romans are destroying. The Romans are in the north, they're marching to the south, and always you have people are fleeing in front of that army. So it's probably the biggest, highest number ever. But how can you even think that the temple would have less than 10,000 people in it at a festival. We're talking minimum hundreds of thousands. And you're going to put them into an area that you say that this is for 10,000? It's not logical. Also, you remember that illustration from Professor Mazar? Professor, the grandfather. And it showed the temple and it showed the palace. Do y'all remember that? Right here? See it? That's because Solomon builds his palace on the Temple Mount. And this, by the way, is recorded in Scripture. And we can establish it out of Scripture. So when we come over here, where's the palace? Where's the king's palace? Are we going to say that's going to be going further south in the Jebusite city? Is that possible? Okay, so let's go back. Now, one thing that I'm going to submit to you is this cannot be the Antonian fortress. I'll show you why in a little bit. Quite a bit is going to be made about not one stone shall stand upon another stone. Hopefully we'll get to talk about that. I just don't know if we'll be able to cover everything at one time, but we'll try. Okay. So, we're going to go to the stepstone structure. Kathleen Kenyon discovers the stepstone structure right about this much of it. She knew it was important, she just didn't know what it was. Now, at that time, nothing else had been excavated in the city of David. Remember, they just got that area back in 67, and this is like 69. So, in 1975, Professor Igal Shilo is going to uncover the entire stepstone structure. He also uncovers what's called the four-posted building. It's a building from the First Temple period. They determined that it was the royal section. This is where the more important families lived. There is called the House of the Boule, where they made seals. Seals were used for documents. And because of the fire, the Babylonians, they baked them, sealed them, and preserved them. And so, anyway, they still didn't determine what the stepstone structure was for until Elat Mazar discovered David's palace. And they realized that David's palace starts right here. That this was what was called a retaining wall. It was a wall that created a firm foundation for the heavier structure up above. Now, last night I gave you can't forget anything I tell you. Okay, you have to remember it all. So how tall did I tell you last night the temple building was? How many? 22 stories. 8 stories is the gateway into it. Okay? 22 stories from a modern building today. All right, so they're going to be made of stone. They don't have an infrastructure of iron. They're going to be made of stone. And what you have, the higher you get with the building, is you have stability problems, especially if you're in an earthquake zone, which Jerusalem is. Jerusalem has earthquakes and has had tremendous earthquakes since I've been alive. And so how do you make a firm foundation? First off, your stones that are going to be on bedrock. What do? Do you just come along and, all right, fellas, drop a stone right here. Then we're going to drop a stone right there. Is that what you do? What do? You what?
Dig the bedrock.
Well, this is the bedrock. You're going to dig a trench in the bedrock. That's called a foundation trench. Okay, Debbie, come hold this for me, please. I have to find a book. by the way, is Josephus. Wait. All right. We're going to go to book 8. That's book 12. All right. In book 8 of Jewish Antiquities, Josephus is going to describe the building of the temple by Solomon. And so, this is going to be paragraph 63, book 8, paragraph 63. And so the king, talking about Solomon, had the foundations for the temple laid very deep in the ground, the material being strong stones capable of resisting the wear of time, which would grow to the soil and be a base and support for the structure to be erected upon them. When the Western Wall Tunnel, how many have been down the Western Wall Tunnel? Okay, Western Wall Tunnel, you need to go down it. This is going to go along the western edge of the Temple Mount, and it will come to, at the very end, we come to what was anciently the Boris. The Boris is going to be that Greek fortress that was enlarged and expanded by, renamed by Herod to the Antonia. And Dr. Dan Bahat. Now, Dan Bahat is a great archaeologist. There are things I don't agree with that are his findings or his opinions, but anything Dan Bahat writes, I'm going to read it. And I will not dismiss it lightly because the man knows his craft. He knows archaeology. So Dan Bahat discovered the foundation trenches for the Boris. Now, how do we know that? Well, first off, its location. Also, it's exactly where it was supposed to be, as well as we have cisterns. And these cisterns were for they tell a story of themselves. He didn't find the stones for the Boris. Any idea why? Secondary use. Somebody else is going to build another building. Why go cut another stone, pay somebody to cut a stone, transport it, and bring it here? We'll just take that stone right there. So they pry it up, but the foundation trench stays. What did they not find in the city of David? Even if you were to say there shouldn't be any stones down to the bedrock, you still have the foundation trenches. And according to Josephus, they were very deep in the ground. Okay? So, all of a sudden they realize this is the retaining wall for David's palace. And so he has two reasons. One is to support the massive stone structure up above, to give it a firm foundation. And secondly, it wasn't big enough to hold his palace. It was too skinny. It was too skinny. He had to increase the size of the ground in order to put his palace. That was what the stepstone structure was. Now that's going to come into play in a few minutes, a little bit more. So this is from Eilat Mazar's second article. The one is, did I find David's palace? So here we have the Ophel. Here's Kenyon's area H right here. Here is the large stone structure. You see it right there? See this? See that red dot? Okay, and then here's the stepstone structure. Here's the Gihon Spring and the Kidron Valley. So now this is going to be before any excavations were done. You'll find this in Eilat Mazar's book on David's Palace. This one, the Palace of King David. You will find it also by Eilat Mazar, the Solomonic Wall in Jerusalem. And you'll find it in the City of David excavation reports, okay, by Eilat Mazar. All right, so this picture was from the dig for Professor Mazar, her grandfather. Before they started to dig, they got an aerial photograph, and so we can see the Temple Mount up here. Look at the Ophel and the southern steps. See, it hasn't been dug yet. All right, and here, this is the southwestern area. There's no digging taking place in here. So David's palace is going to be approximately right here, right there. Now, across the street, do you see this? That's a parking lot. That parking lot was called the Gavati parking lot. And they used it, I'll show you. See right here? They parked buses and cars in it. They expanded the parking lot a little bit further. And that's where we used to park when we went to the City of David. Well, the parking lot went into disrepair. It had potholes that you could drop a car in. So the guy had a choice. Had three choices, or two at first. One is he could repair it at great expense, but he wasn't going to make any money. He wasn't making any money from the parking lot. Or he had an offer for someone wanted to buy the parking lot and put up a big building. Well, again, here come the organizations, all of the colleges and everything. And so they say, City of David, I wonder what we can find there. It would make us famous, because that's music to a university's ears. And so they raise the money and they buy the parking lot. And they give it to the City of David, to their park. So they're going to excavate it. For the last 8 years, this has been the hottest excavation in Israel. Okay? Now remember, David's palace is right where Professor Morton and Bob Cornuke were saying the temple is, as well as the Gavati parking lot. So it's going to be a prime interest. What do we find there? Want to go first? Let's go back to 2 Samuel. Now remember, we were there earlier. This is where we didn't read it, but 2 Samuel is where David has sinned. He's numbered the people. He has to choose between one of three bad choices. He chooses that Hashem will bring a plague on the nation for 3 days. Now let's see what it says. The prophet is going to be God, G-A-D, God. It's not G-O-D, but God, okay? So he comes, should be chapter 24. And we're going to go to verse 17. Then David spoke to the Lord when he saw the angel was striking the people and said, surely I have sinned, repentance, done wickedly, but these sheep, what have they done? Let your hand, I pray, be against me and against my father's house. And God, the prophet, came that day to David and said to him, go up, erect an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Ornah the Jebusite. So if the temple is built at the very same location where the threshing floor of Ornah the Jebusite is, and the temple is located here, what is Ornah the Jebusite's threshing floor doing in David's living room? In other words, they can't be the same place. If you're saying this is where the temple stood and that's where David's palace was located, he has to go up from there, north. We're going to have the same thing again. It will say, verse 19, so David, according to the word of God, went up as the Lord commanded. Now Ornah looked and saw the king and his servants coming toward him. Excuse me. So Ornah went out and bowed before the king with his face to the ground. And then Ornah said, why has my lord the king come to his servant? Now I want you to notice, and you can read this in Hebrew. Believe me, it will say the same thing in Hebrew, but do it. Read it in Hebrew, or get somebody to help you read it in Hebrew so that you've seen it for yourself. You're not going on what I'm saying or someone else is saying. Okay, but we have that Ornah sees David. David is coming up. Told that twice in the passage. He's coming up from his palace, and Ornah sees him coming. So it indicates there's a little bit of distance between them. It's not going to be, well, walking from here to over to that side of the aisle. There's a little bit of distance, and he sees him, and he comes, and you know the story. He purchases the threshing floor, he builds the altar, and that's where the temple is going to be located. All right, so let's go back. Here's the problem. David's palace was in the same location as Martin and Robert Corning's proposed temple. How could he have gone up from there to build the altar on Mount Moriah? They would have had to tear down his palace in order to build the temple. We have a problem with that because that palace, the palace of David, is mentioned in Nehemiah 3, is still being there in the Second Temple period. It doesn't match. It doesn't even come close to it. You can't build from the time that they build that palace, we should not have any buildings that would be from the 10th century all the way to the destruction by the Romans in the 70th century, in the 70 Common Era, right? We should not have anything because the temple's there. If we find anything else, and you're not going to believe what they found, it can't be the location. So here, this is where David's palace is, the Gavati parking lot. And here, this is out of Wikipedia. Now, you can look this up. I'll tell you a few things that you can look up. Let me give you a really great site to go to. It is the City of David, or Ir David, I-R, Ir, and David, Archaeological Park. It's run by the Israel Antiquities Authority. Okay, so we're not talking about some organization or something coming in, and they have a website. They will send you materials. You can ask them questions, and they're going to give you let me show you these. Debbie?
You could just put it in the microphone stand.
Oh, no, I walk around too much.
That makes me
Stay here. I'm going to have you pass these out. These, open up. Oh, this is a really good one. This is by Eli Shukron, the front cover article. They're called The City of David, Studies of Ancient Jerusalem. This one is from the 13th conference. It is going to be by Israel's leading archaeologist. Now, there will be a few articles that are in English. The majority of the articles are in Hebrew. This article by Eli Shukron is on the Western Wall and a major discovery that he made about when the wall was completed. By the way, Eli Shukron very definitely believes that the Temple Mount is the location of the temple. You pass that around. Okay. This one is going to be the Cities of David study, and this is going to be the 11th conference from 2010. Look, find the table of contents and look at what the articles are. That'll blow you away. The 8th conference, that's for 2007. And I bought these over at the Visitor Center. You don't have to order them. You can just walk in, buy them. Yeah, you have to be in Israel to do that, okay? All right, the 10th conference, this is going to be from 2009. By the way, they will have the conference. It always occurs in the month of Elul, which starts tomorrow night. No, Monday night. We have the 14th conference, which is in 2013. And then the last one here is the 9th conference in 2008. All right? So they're going to document in these conferences, in these publications, all of the discoveries. Okay? Listen, you want to use real archaeologists. And when you want to, I'm not an archaeologist. I use archaeological material. But what I hope I do is refer people to the authorities, to the people that you can look that are going to have the information we need. Now, this I chose from Wikipedia because everybody goes to Wikipedia, but you can check out all the information. This is on the, I typed in Akra, A-K-R-A. Sometimes it's spelled A-C-R-A. The Akra was a fortress that was built by Antiochus Epiphanes IV. Now, he's the villain of Hanukkah. It was built to dominate the temple and to garrison a Greek garrison, or to put a Greek garrison in the city of Jerusalem. So in November 2015, the Israel Antiquities Authority announced the probable discovery of the Akra. Well, you see how they dated this thing? It'll blow you away. According to archaeologists Doron Ben-Ami, Yana Tekahanovets, and Salom Cohen, excavating the Gavati parking lot adjacent to the city of David, they had unearthed a complex of rooms and fortified walls they identified as the Akra. This places it slightly south of previous suggested locations of the Ophel. Finds include fortification walls. Fortification walls. Let me see. Let's see. They had unearthed a complex of rooms and fortified walls they identified as Akra. This places it slightly south of previous suggested locations of the Ophel. Finds include fortification walls, a watchtower measuring 4 by 20 meters. 20 meters is big. It's huge. And a glacis. All right, who in here does not know what a glacis is? I'll be surprised if very few of you do know what a glacis is. A glacis is going to be a part of a fortification. What it is, it's a slanted wall. Did you go to Beit Shean, any of you? Beit Shean. How about Caesarea? You see at Caesarea, you see the Crusader fortress, and there's a dry moat, and it has a slanted stone wall. Well, at Beit Shean, they have the cities up on the top of the hill, but they have these slopes. Now, why do they have those? They don't want you to get up to their wall. They want you to be at a distance because they'll get sappers up there and they will undermine the stones, or worse, they'll bring up a battering ram. So, or scaling ladders. And you want to keep them out of the city. So, the glacis, usually what they would do is in the ancient times they would plaster them. They would make a type of plaster. When an enemy approached, they poured olive oil on them. That's right. That's right. So you know the guy's sliding down the glacis, okay? All right? But you understand the protection. So they found the glacis to the Akra. Listen to this. You'll love this. Bronze arrowheads, lead sling stones, and ballista stones. Now, you know what ballista stones are? They look like cannonballs. All right? But they're stone. And that's the ancient weapon, the military shell. Yeah, it's the ancient cannonball. Okay? Were unearthed at the site, stamped with a trident, the emblem of Antiochus IV Epiphanes. These are indicative of the military nature of the site, the efforts to take it. The excavation also yielded coins from the reign of Antiochus IV Epiphanes through Antiochus VII, as well as a multitude of stamped Rhodean amphora handles. That's from the island of Rhodes with wine. All right, so what do I do with the little... All right. You want to see some pictures?
And one arm.
This is part of the glacis right here. Now, this is in the exact area that both of these books claim the temple was located. But this is going to be built about 165 years before the time of Yeshua. So if the temple is standing there, how did Antiochus succeed in building that building? You see right here, you see these? These are going to be from a later period. These are Roman. This is going to be after the temple is destroyed, the time of 132 to 130, the time of Hadrian. But guess what? Next to it, you just can't see it in the picture, are Hasmonean houses. How can somebody build a house in the court of the temple? They can't be at the same place. Are you understanding? I mean, it doesn't take, all you've got to do is look at the established archaeological proof. And you can look it up for yourself. You can see it. You can test it as many ways as you want. And this is the record that's there. Here, this is the wall of the Acra. Now, when we had a tour to Israel back in late October, early November. And so we came up from the Shiloh pool. We come out at the Gavati parking lot. We're walking on the road that went up to the Temple Mount. And we're at the Gavati pool. We come back a few days later, and we go through what's called the water system. It was a sewer that ran up beside the western road of the Temple Mount, beneath the street. And the Jews, when the Romans conquered the city, the Jews fled to the sewers. They were trying to get away. Now, Josephus writes about this. And they fled into the sewers, and Josephus states that the Romans could hear them in the sewers. They tore the ground up and came in after them. Now, right here in this location, I don't have any of the pictures up here from that, but I got a lot on my phone. They found a golden bell, and they believe that golden bell is from the garment of one of the high priests, from the bells and the pomegranates. And they found a Roman sword, about so long, still had the leather scabbard on it. They found many other things. But we have this, we hired this young Orthodox archaeologist, and so he is showing us around the Gavati parking lot, some of the features, and I asked him a question. I said, okay, this is the western side, right here. This is the western side of the Acra. How far east did it extend? And he said, well, I said, do they know? He said, yes. That back in 1975, when Professor Igal Shiloh excavated the stepstone structure, he found an Hasmonean glacis, but he didn't know to identify it with the Acra. And so Eilat Mazar, in her book, in this book as well as this book, she has this picture. I'll read the text here. It says, the Hasmonean earth glacis over the stepstone structure looking south as opposed by Egal Shiloh expedition. All right, see, here is the glacis. Here is the stepstone structure. Now here, this is the drawing. See the stepstone structure? Here is that four-post building that Professor Shiloh discovered. Here's the glacis over the top of it. They removed it. The only way that you can expose what's below it is to remove it, but they photographed it. They took all, and not until they found the Acra on the other side with all the evidence from Antiochus did they realize this is the Acra. It gets better. This is Josephus. Yeah, this is going to be from, Josephus wrote 5 books. This is Jewish Wars, book 5, paragraph 145. Okay, he also has Antiquities of the Jews, Jewish Antiquities, lots of books. That's a huge edition. He has a very small book called The Life of Flavius Josephus and another small book called Against Apion. We use all 4 extensively, okay? So it says, but if we go to the other way westward, he's describing Jerusalem. It began at the same place and extended through a place called Betzo to the gate of the Essenes. Now, the gate of the Essenes, for those of you that are familiar with Jerusalem, one of the big places that the buses come to park, you get out of the bus and you walk in through what's called the Zion Gate. You can tell it because it's been shot up by machine gun bullets all over. It's real easy to identify. And then you walk around the Armenian quarter and you come in to the Jewish quarter. Okay? So the the Essene Gate was discovered several years ago. You can, by the way, if you're in the Bar Archive, right in Essene Gate, you're going to find the article of when they discovered it, they examined it, and then they covered it back up. You know why they covered it back up? Funding. They did not have the money to be able to preserve it and protect it, so they cover it back up after they photograph it, examine it, study it, do all of that, so that the ground itself will be a preserver till maybe one day later they'll have the funds to open it up again. But the Essene Gate, if you are facing the gate, the Essene Gate will be about a quarter of a mile down to your left. All right, I know where it is because I went to find it. So we have the Essene Gate, that's going to be on the south. All right, so it's running along, the whole city is following the contour of the Hinnom Valley. So after that, it went southward, having its bending above the fountain Siloam. That's going to be the Shiloach pool. Where it also bends again toward the east, and it's going to start heading north at Solomon's Pool. It reaches as far as a certain place, which they called Ophlis. The Ophlis is the Greek for Ophel, where it was joined to the eastern cloister of the temple. What does cloister mean? It means a portico. It means a covered stoa. Okay? But notice it doesn't say where at the Ophel was the temple. It says that the Ophel, they are heading on the eastern side, coming up from the bottom, from the south, heading north. So you have the temple, the eastern portico is going to be joined to the Ophel. All right? That's Josephus. This one is my favorite. This is going to be paragraph 349, 350. We're going to go, I think, through 355. Yes. This is from Book 6 of Wars. I want you to look at this carefully as we go through. Now, Josephus is recording Titus. He's given a speech. Titus was the Roman general that destroyed the temple and destroyed Jerusalem. His father was the emperor. After his father dies, he becomes the emperor. Are not your people dead? This is Titus. He's speaking to the Jews. There is a handful of holdouts, and he's wanting them to surrender. He says, are not your people dead? Is not your holy house gone? Notice, here's a question. You answer me. Is, according to this text, was when he makes the speech, was the temple already destroyed or not? It's destroyed, right? Is not your holy house gone? Is not your city in my power? And are not your own very lives in my hands? Do you still deem it a part of valor to die? However, I will not imitate your madness. If you throw down your armor and deliver up your bodies to me, I grant you your lives. And I will act like a mild master of a family. What cannot be healed shall be punished, and the rest I will preserve for my own house. To that offer of Titus, they made this reply, that they could not accept it because they had sworn never to do so. But they desired they might have permission to go through the wall that had been made around them with their wives and children. For that, they would go to the desert and leave the city to him. At this, Titus had great indignation that when they were in the case of men already taken captives, they should pretend to make their own terms with him as if they had been conquerors. So he ordered this proclamation to be made to them that they should no more come out to him as deserters, nor hope for any further security. This is where it goes now. For that he would henceforth spare no one, but fight them with his whole army, and that they must save themselves as well as they could, for that he would from henceforth treat them according to the laws of war. So he gave orders to the soldiers both to burn and plunder the city. Excuse me. Who did nothing indeed that day, but on the next day they set fire to the repository of the archives, that's what we call the zestos, to Acra. How can the temple be where the Acra is if the temple's already destroyed, and after that he's going to burn the Acra? To the council house, excuse me, to the council house. Last night I showed you that in the Ophel that Elat Mazar found a plaque. This plaque indicated the building of what we call the Beit Din Gadol. The Beit Din Gadol is the court, is the lowest of the three Sanhedrin courts that met at the southern steps of the temple. She discovered the building still standing, several stones high, by the way. By the way, the whole thing of not one stone will stand upon another, that is a method that is used. We find Yeshua using it for the entire city of Jerusalem in Luke chapter 19. It is an expression that means total destruction to the city. It is not taken literally. You can go all over the city of Jerusalem and see ruins, some of them standing to 2 stories high. And you could go to the Herodian mansions. You could go to the Zestos. You could go to the third wall where they still have up to 10 feet high, stone on top of stone on top of stone. And I'm saying to you, Yeshua was not lying, but the truth is there are stones upon stones upon stones. What he was saying, there would be total destruction of the city. It is a method that was used commonly in the ancient time. Okay, so the council house into the place called Ophlis, the Ophel. Notice that the Ophel and the Acra are destroyed after the temple. They cannot be the same place. At which time the fire proceeded as far as the palace of Queen Helena, which by the way is in the Acra, which was in the middle of Acra. The lanes also were burnt down, as were also those houses that were full of the dead bodies of such as were killed by famine. All right. Now, we're going to talk briefly. How long have I been going? I can't see it. I've been going an hour and 45 minutes. Dennis, could I go just a little bit further but give everybody a break, maybe a 10 minutes? Y'all like a break? All right. We'll take a break about 10 minutes. I want to show you the Fortress Antonio. Okay?
מי זאת עולה מן המדבר, מקוטרת כמו לבונה, קטי מאות עשן, נישאת בפריון.
I'll teach you a little Arabic. Yalla, yalla, yalla. Y'all know that? Hurry, hurry, hurry. Yalla, yalla, yalla. Yalla, yalla, yalla. Israelis use that all the time. Okay. I'm going to get my wife to come up here for just a moment, and she's going to tell you a couple of things about a few of the materials that we have. Here's these three. Be sure also to mention, along with this, the typical course.
Well, okay, you could actually say that yourself, you know.
You do such a good job.
You'll know that we have a table, or there's a table in the back that has a few of our things. We did not bring in everything because, well, first of all, we did not bring as much as what we normally would bring. Also, we're here on Shabbat, and so it just didn't seem fitting to put it all out on a table. But we do have several things here. I will have several more things tomorrow. But one of the items on the table is a little brochure that looks like this. If you take nothing else with you today, at least get one of these little brochures. It represents a sister site to Hatikva Ministries. Y'all know that Joe is Hatikva Ministries, okay? This is a sister site called JerusalemTempleStudy.com. Now, it is a member site, meaning that there's usually a fee that is paid on a monthly basis. Some people will pay for a year at a time. There are various levels of membership. There is also a free membership. However, depending on what type of membership you have, there's different things you can access, or as a gold member can even download and copy. For example, most of the video and audio materials we've had in the past are going to be on the Jerusalem Temple Study site. I'll give it. As a gold member, you can listen to or download anything that's on the site. As a gold member, you can also, at no extra expense, you can take the Temple course, which is one of Joe's crowning achievements right now. So he grades each test personally. Rather than that, there are 13 lessons in the first course of study. Each lesson is at least 2 hours long with a video, plus other reading material, plus other information, that he gives you. So it's quite extensive. By the time you finish, I think one of the lessons there was a part A and a B, and he's anticipating that the last one is going to be like a 5-hour study. So it's rather in depth, and that's just the first course. It's available through the Jerusalem Temple Study site. Now, having said that, you know that all these guys that come out to see y'all, they all have membership sites, because that's just how it's done. What's that? Deanna has one also. That's just how it's done. I can promise you that there's going to be more on the Jerusalem Temple Study.com site than any other. And the reason I know this, he's going to have more on there than Rico. He's going to have more than Bill Cloud. He's going to have more than, what's the guy up in the, he's going to have a lot. And the reason I know this for a fact is because Joe is older than just about all of these guys. And he's been around a lot longer and therefore has produced a lot more material. Some of this material goes back to the early days, the early 90s, when he was actually on TBN, and then later when he was on GLC. You could actually watch some of these programs and watch his the color of his hair change and his beard grow. So, okay. Anyway, to pick up one of these for sure. They're back there on the table, or you can always ask us questions about them. Of course, our mother site is hatikvaministries.org. You can find a lot of the materials we have on the store there. But the Jerusalem Temple Study site, like I said, as a member, you can access a lot of these materials and no extra cost. The one thing that we cannot provide on the JerusalemTempleStudy.com site are the books. So we did bring several books with us. This is one that he had done a few years ago. It has color pictures in it. It's bound locally by us. And this one actually has quite a bit of information. It has a couple of little errors in it, nothing really major. It is going to be revised soon, but it's actually a rather good book about the discovery of some of the locations of the buildings. It does have color photos, so that makes it a little bit more expensive to print. The tour of the temple was actually taken from this book. So if you saw the slides that he had done earlier, a lot of those pictures will be in here. Now, neat thing is that this book has been translated into Spanish. So if you yourself or if you have a friend who would like to have a Spanish copy of this, we do have several of the English and Spanish books available. Yeah, here's the same book in Spanish. And you can, by all means, the books are on the back table. You can feel free to pick one up, look, thumb through it, take a look at it. But we have it in English or Spanish. And yes. We don't. Basically, when we print, everything's. That's right. That and reading glasses. Okay. Another book we brought with us is not exactly the right season, but we recently had our book on Esther, Prophecies in the Book of Esther, which is on our hatikvaministries.org site. That was recently translated into Spanish as well, so I brought several copies. I have a few English. I have mostly Spanish, because we're getting some ready for somebody else. I just had them on hand. Now the other book, this is the big one. This one represents almost a lifetime achievement. This is what Joe has spent several of the last several years of his life working on. This is a volume 1, believe it or not. He is currently working on volume 2 and expects to have 3 volumes in the set. This is a much more intensive study of the temple. It will include color photographs as well as charts. It'll have some of the same pictures that are in the other book, but it is going to go into much greater detail. It's not going to give you stories. It's not going to be, a synopsis of what could have taken place here. This is basically information. This is very factual, not really opinionated. This is just a factual work, a research on the location of the temple building. This is very, very important. It's vital for what's going on now. It's a leather-bound edition in gold embossed. We have several books back there on the table. Now, because it's Shabbat, and we ordinarily do not do any type of business on Shabbat, it's okay with us if you want to take one look, if you want to purchase a book later, to pick it up and kind of look at it now. Or I think that there was some talk about maybe ordering through your pastor here, and we'll work something out. The thing is, we want you to have the books. We don't want to sell on Shabbat. So there's, so we can all be friends about this and trust each other and work something out here. There's some ways that we can work with this so that everybody can be happy. But anyway, if you have any questions about the books, please let us know. And in the meantime, if you'd like to take a look at them, by all means, they're back there for you to see. Just don't mess them up if you're not going to get one. Okay, that's all I have. So, okay, Joe. And I will take these items back to the back.
The big one is 110. I regret that it costs that much. It wasn't our desire for it to. We publish ourselves, and we couldn't afford to get them in paperback. We had to get so many, we didn't have that much money. So I could buy these in hardback at 100 at a time, which we could do, but it also makes them expensive. Yes, sir. The small ones are 20. Okay. And one other thing that let me mention real quick is we have a tour coming up to Israel, leaving on April 15th. And it's going to be we're going to a lot of places. If you've been to Israel before, you would probably not have been. But we're going to go to all the temple places, temple sites. I'll take you to places that most people don't go. And we just started getting this tour put together a couple days ago. We've already got 9 people signed up for it. So it's going to be April 15th, leaving from Newark, New Jersey on Delta Airlines. And it'll be a 2-week tour. And we don't even have the pricing on it yet, okay? But if you will give me your information, I will. Well, I couldn't get guides in November. We tried. We tried for about, we had to book all the way back into last year for 218. And right now, they're wanting us to book for 219 and 220. And you just can't get guides. And so, I would love to go. I've got a temple conference to go to with Chaim Richmond in November. Deanna, you might want to try that. That's going to be November 9th to the 12th in Lubbock. All right. Are we ready to go? Okay. So this is a quote from Dr. Bourne. It's on his page 14. It says, now, as soon as the army, by the way, the quote is going to be a quote from Josephus from Wars 7, Book 7, paragraph. Now, he's using another numbering system. There's 2 numbering systems. This is what we call the Winston numbering system. The other, where you saw Book 5, paragraph 149, that's what we call the Loeb system. These are the Loeb. If you have a 1-volume Josephus, that's the Winston. Yes, ma'am. Okay, the rabbis will not allow us to use the Winston because they believe it's been very seriously edited and it's not reliable. Okay, so anyway, but for all the rest of the wall, wait. Now, as soon as the army had no more people to slay or to plunder, because there remained none to be objects of their fury, for they would not have spared any had there remained any other work to be done, Caesar, meaning Titus, gave orders that they should now demolish the entire city and temple, but should leave as many of the towers standing as were the greatest eminence, that is, the Phasaelus, the Hippicus, and the Miriam. These are by the Joppa Gate. These were towers that were there at Herod's western palace. And so much of the walls as enclosed the city on the west side. This wall was spared in order to afford a camp for such as were to lie in garrison in the upper city, as were the towers, the 3 forts of the upper city, also spared, in order to demonstrate to posterity what kind of city it was, how well fortified, which the Roman valor had subdued. But for all the rest of the wall surrounding Jerusalem, it was so thoroughly laid even with the ground by those that dug it up to the foundation, that there was nothing to make those that came thither believe it. Jerusalem had ever been inhabited. This was the end which Jerusalem came to by the madness of those that were for innovations, a city otherwise of great magnificence and of mighty fame among all mankind. Now, this is very easy to check out. There are numbers of sites that you can go to. Israel Antiquities Authority, go to Biblical Archaeology Review, look up things such as the Herodian mansions. Herodian mansions, they have about 9 big houses that are going to be under a building called the World Museum. They are underneath, and these were the home of what was believed to be high priest. Based upon the affluence of the houses, based upon the number of mikvaot or immersion chambers, based upon several finds that were found by Professor Avigad when they excavated it. Now, Some of the walls, for instance, in the palatial mansion, they have walls that are still standing from the bottom of the floor all the way to the top of this building. And so right there, it would say, well, by the way, let me read something to you. You might be familiar. Let's read this. That in Matthew chapter 24, it says that Yeshua went out and departed from the temple, and his Talmudim came up to him to show him the buildings of the temple. And Yeshua said to them, do you not see all these things? Surely I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down. Go to the book of Mark, chapter 13. In Mark 13, all right, so verse 3, now as he sat on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, and John, and Andrew asked him privately, tell us, when will these things be? What will be the sign when all these things will be fulfilled? And Yeshua answered them, began to say, let's see. Oh, wait, verse 2 is what it needs. 1 and 2. Then as he went out of the temple, one of his Talmudim said to him, teacher, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here. And Yeshua answered and said to him, do you see these great buildings? Not one stone should be left upon another that shall not be thrown down. Okay? Now, what Martin and Karduk are going to make a very big deal about, they're going to say the retaining walls. The retaining walls that go around the Temple Mount, that this is part of what is called the temple. It is not. You remember the stepstone structure? Stepstone structure was a retaining wall. It was a wall that was there to support the fill that is behind it and to support the massive weight of the buildings that are built upon it. Okay? But it's not in an archaeological sense, nor in a historical sense, are they considered to be the stones. I want to show you something, by the way. All right, I'm going to step right up here. Now let's say that we're at the top of the Temple Mount, and we're going to disassemble the stones. So I push a stone off, right? Where's it going to fall? Straight down, right? Now, I'm going to have maybe 200 to 300 feet of stone that has to be pushed out. So I push this top layer of stone, and it all falls in a pile right here. What happens when I push the next layer of stone? It falls on top of that one, and that pile gets higher and higher. And have any idea how high the piles of stone reached at the Temple Mount? In some places up to 60 feet. The stones underneath, they're protected from being cast down because the debris level. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's going to fill up. So tomorrow I'm going to show you a stone that was found in the debris. It came off the top southwestern corner, and it's mentioned both in the Mishnah and by Josephus as being on the temple. And it's inscribed. Okay? So, we have, let's go to Luke 19. In Luke 19, verse 41. Now, as he drew near the city and wept over it. I have a question for you. Where is Yeshua staying during the week that he came to Jerusalem where he will die? Where's he staying? Where?
By the Mount of Olives.
Yes, specifically at Bethany. In Hebrew it's called Beit Ani. Beit Ani. The house of affliction is what it would translate it, which is on the eastern side of the Mount of Olives close to the top. And it's still there. He's coming over the top and he's viewing the city. He says, as he drew near the city, he saw the city and wept over, saying, if you had known, even you, especially this your day, the things that make for your peace, but now they're hidden from your eyes. For days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment again around you, surround you, and close you in on every side. Question, is he talking here about the Temple Mount alone, or is he talking about all of Jerusalem? All of Jerusalem. And level you and your children within you to the ground, and they will not leave in you one stone upon another, because you did not know the time of your visitation. Okay? All right. We use expressions that we do not take literally all the time. Debbie mentioned one. This is not going to be as serious, but I was rolling on the ground with laughter. Now, people understand when you say that you weren't literally rolling on the ground. But what you just said is, I laughed a lot. It was really funny. Okay, we could go on, and Debbie and I did this for about 200 miles driving up here, and taking expressions that we say. But archaeological remains all over the city. Just in the city of the Jewish quarter, they found hundreds of buildings that still have walls standing, which would seem to not to be a literal fulfillment of what Yeshua said. And so again, let me mention, I'm not saying Yeshua was wrong. I'm saying we're reading it wrong. So I'm going to show you this. This is out of the Mishnah. Now, in the Mishnah, this is from the Tractate Tamid, which is going to be on the temple. It's on the daily services of the temple. And so it says, from Jericho, they could hear the sound of the great gate. The great gate is going to be the gate going into the holy place as it was opened. Now, the great gate from Jerusalem to Jericho is 15 miles. I don't think anybody believed that in Jericho you could literally hear the sound of that gate. But it means it was loud. From Jericho, they could hear the sound of the magraphah. That is an instrument that's used in the temple. We think that there were possibly two different ones. One was a bagpipe, one was a water organ. A bagpipe and a water organ. From Jericho, they could hear the sound of the wood that Ben Katim made as a mukni, it means a machine, for the kior, the water laver. From Jericho, they could hear the sound of Gavini, the crier. Okay, this is going to be the crier of the temple. From Jericho, they could hear the sound of the cymbal. That's the finger cymbals that the choir director had. Everybody understands you could literally hear the sound of the cymbal. But he's pointed out important sounds, noises. Do you understand? It was something that was employed commonly in Jewish writings, Greek writings, Latin writings of the first century. Okay? All right. We're going to go forward. I got to show you something funny, though. This is Martin. This is on page 21, and I like to dive when I saw this. It says, the Greek word Jesus used in his prophetic context to describe the temple. What's wrong with that statement? I would say Hebrew. Okay? He didn't go around talking in Greek. They translated from the Hebrew into Greek. Okay? So the whole idea is using a Greek word to establish his argument when he didn't speak in Greek. All right, we're going to go on past this. All right. Now, we'll do this and we'll stop. It says, and where is now that great city Jerusalem, the metropolis of the Jewish nation, which was fortified by so many walls round about, which had so many fortresses and large towers to defend it, which could hardly contain the instruments prepared for the war, and which had so many 10,000s of men to fight for it. Where is this city that was believed to have God himself inhabiting therein? It is now demolished to the very foundations, have nothing left but that monument of it preserved. I mean, the camp of those, the Romans, that hath destroyed it, which camp still dwells upon its ruins. Some unfortunate old men also lie upon the ashes of the temple, that in total ruins, burnt to ashes, and a few women are there preserved alive by the enemy for bitter shame and reproach. This is an article. By the way, if I would have had enough time, I would have brought articles from a number of various outstanding archaeologists. The amount of time I had, I put together from Eilat Mazar. I know her, and I just really respect her, and I love the way she writes. But she wrote an article. This came out in November, December 2006, and it's called Hadrian's Legion. Now, here, what Dr. Martin did is he's trying to make that the camp of those, the Romans that had destroyed it, left but that monument of it preserved. He's trying to say that's the Antonium, okay? The Romans are going to build a camp on the western side. Now, if we had time, we'd go through all the texts from Josephus for you to see this. They built the camp for the 10th Legion by the three towers. We saw them a few moments ago, the Miriam, the Hippicus, okay, by the three towers. It's right by the Joppa Gate. They're going to remain there all the way until from 70 to 132 Common Era. 132 Common Era, they closed that camp down. They moved and built a new camp on the southwestern part of the Temple Mount and the Ophel. They had a reason in doing this. Now, this is an article by Eilat Mazar called Hadrian's Legion. If you'll remember that the Roman emperor at this time was Hadrian, and the Jews have revolted against Hadrian under the leader Bar Kokhba. Now, where's the temple book? Did you take it back there? Okay, you don't need to get it. On the cover of the temple book, the big one, the Measure the Pattern book, I have a picture of a coin. And the coin is for the Jewish revolt. And the revolt against Hadrian, 132 to 135 Common Era. And it is a coin of the temple. Because that was basically their platform. You know, like Trump has a platform and Obama had a platform, Democratic platform. The Bar Kokhba, the platform was, we're going to rebuild the temple. That's what the Bar Kokhba War was concerned with. The Romans moved the 10th Legion to the location of the Temple Mount to block Bar Kokhba from building the temple there. Now, she's going to document this of the founds that they made. They found a Roman bath from the 2nd century, not from the 1st. But she's going to document all this, okay? But here, in his text, he's going to say, this is the Antonium. That is a half-truth. It is not. It is rather the towers on the western side. Now, here, this will blow you away. I have to tell you a little bit of background. In Book 6 of Wars, the Jews, the Romans are in the Antonia Fortress. First off, let me ask you something. They're going to state in both these books that the Antonia was a classic Roman fortress. Okay? I want to show you something. This is Masada. Now, Masada is 35 acres, by the way, same acreage-wise as the Temple Mount. It was originally built by Alexander Yannai, who came before Herod. Herod comes along, and he expands it, builds two new palaces in it, and puts his own touch on it, and it becomes a Herodian fortress. It is not in any fashion a Roman fortress. Now this is a drawing, the pictures were kind of blurry, of what's called Macarius. Macarius is going to be in Jordan. It's across from Qumran in Jordan. Actually, it's in between Qumran and Gedi on the other side. This is where Yochanan Hamatzvil, John the Immerser, was beheaded. I used to go over to Jordan. I don't go there anymore. I don't want to go to Arab countries since you don't know who or what's going to happen. But we used to go over there. Fortress is not that big, maybe 3 or 4 minutes to go across from one side to the other. But again, this is a Herodian. It was first built by Alexander Yunnai. Herod comes along, he refurbishes it, makes it Herodian. This is totally Herod. This is Herodian. This is where Herod is buried here. To walk from here to there is 1 minute. Okay, it's not going to be an acre in size at the top. It's going to be, goes down underneath the fullness of the fortress. How many have been to Herodian? Several. Very impressive. The leading authority, I'm going to mention him now, is Professor Ehud Netzer. Netzer actually found here at Herodian, this was his life work, he found Herod's tomb. In 2012, they made a decision to exhibit Herod's tomb at the Israel Museum. So Professor Netzer and his staff met with members of the Israel Museum staff, and they met at Herodian to decide what would go, how it would be set up, make all these critical decisions. Professor Netzer is standing, they have a wood banister looking down on Herod's grave. And he's standing there talking to the people, and the banister broke, and he fell and died on top of Herod's tomb. That's true, okay? So in 2013, in October 2013, they had a special exhibit to not only of the Herod's tomb, but to honor Professor Netzer. Now, Netzer was the leading authority on Herodian structures. He was recognized everywhere. A friend of mine, I mentioned her last night, worked as his assistant for a while, Dr. Orit Peleg. I read what Netzer had on the Antonia. I was driving to Green Bay, Wisconsin to speak on the temple, and a friend of mine from Oklahoma City, or from Norman, had offered to drive so I could read. He was afraid I was going to read while I was driving, and which I don't do it anymore. So anyway, I'm reading, and I see what Netzer has written on the Antonia, and it was what my own studies had, the same thing. So I told my friend, I want, as soon as we get back, I'm going to try to call Israel and see if I get an appointment with him to go and sit and talk with him. And lo and behold, when I got home, I found out he had died the day before. They had fallen. Now here, this is the Holy Land Hotel model. Understand that this is not very accurate on the temple. It's like a skeleton of the inner courtyards. They were huge, gigantic. But you see right over here, this little area, this is one of the things that I disagree with Dan Bahat and Lee Rittmeyer on. Here is a close-up of it. This is the area that is north, on the northwest side. And I agree with Dr. Morton and Bob Cornu that this would not accommodate the size or the numbers that are described in Josephus. Okay? However, you're going to have the majority of your archaeologists, even going back to the time of the Palestinian Exploration Fund, Conrad Schick, for instance, made a model of the temple, And he showed the Antonia coming down into the Temple Mount. I believe it would have come a little bit further. There was a moat approximately right here, a dry moat that was there at the time of the Hasmoneans. It was filled up by Pompey, the Roman general. It was discovered in 1868 by Charles Warren from the Palestine Exploration Fund. He located it, and he was able to find its depth and its width and its length. So we have measurements on it. Yes, that it penetrated in. Yeah, different dimensions. But your majority, excuse me, your majority of scholars are going to have it penetrating in, okay? There is more evidence based upon the cisterns that were found by the PEF, the Palestine Exploration Fund. We have one cistern, we have a cistern that is located about right here in the Western Wall Tunnel, and it goes over into the Temple Mount area. We have another one located right here on the northern side of the moat, and then we have another one that's going to be further up here. We have 3 cisterns that were for the Boris. They are dated by their structure, by the way that they are made. We're able to put a time period on them. These were built in the Hasmonean period. Okay? So, by the way, 2 scholars, and one of them is, I know fairly well. I mean, we correspond back and forth. His name is David Jacobson, and then Shimon Gibson from the Palestine Exploration Fund. They wrote an article called The Oldest Datable Cisterns on the Temple Mount. And they're going to talk about these cisterns. So it's not just a matter of, oh, well, I think. I'm telling you, there's research been done on this, okay? Now, let's go back over here. Let's see. Now, here's what had happened. All right. This is what happened. The Jews were within the temple. They are holding out. There are actually 3 Jewish armies. There's one in the upper city, there's one in the lower city, and there's one in the temple. The Romans take on the temple first. They will conquer it first, then they conquer the upper city, then they attack the lower city, which you read before about the Ophel and Acra. So the defenders in the temple are going to dig a big tunnel that goes under the Antonia. The purpose of the tunnel is they want to undermine the Antonia where it'll fall down. They fill the whole thing up with pitch, with straw, set it all on fire. It didn't work. The Antonia did not collapse, but the foundations were severely weakened. So any kind of thing come up that the Antonia could fall at any time. Okay, so that's where we pick up in the story. You can go back and read all of this for yourself, please do. Now Titus gave orders to his soldiers that were with him to dig up the foundations of the Tower of Antonia. That just wiped their book out. And make him a ready passage for his army to come up. Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead. We're going to have 4 towers. Can y'all see this table? We're going to have a tower over here. We're going to have a tower over here, a tower over here, and we're going to have a super tower right here. Now he's going to have these towers here. He's going to have them demolished. He'll also have this one demolished. He's going to leave this tower intact. Okay? Now, what he's going to do, unlike the Carnook and the Martin model, they have a separation of some distance between the temple and between the Antonia and the temple. In reality, they're going to be only with the area of the moat, keeping them separate. In other words, the moat is going to be less than the length of this room, even before it starts to cut back. All right, so that's how close they are. So he has all of this demolished so that his army can march one man here, another man here, another man here, side by side in formation to attack the wall. And so he wants to go with them. They won't let him. He's going to go. He says, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this one remaining tower, and I'm going to watch. I'm going to watch the fight. They wouldn't let him go with him because he was too valuable. So he agreed. He was going to go to this tower, and he wanted to watch the fight so that if a man was a coward, he could identify him because he recognized him, and that they would punish him. But if a man was a hero, he could identify him and reward him. That means you have to be you have to be close to do it. You can't be a third of a mile away, which is how far they have between the Antonia and the temple. All right? So, here, it says, for his army to come up. In the meantime, the rest of the Roman army had in 7 days' time overthrown some foundations of the Tower of Antonia. See, it's some foundation. And 150. For the Jews, wait. Now we're going to jump forward to paragraph 311. For the Jews, by demolishing the Tower of Antonia, following the destruction of the temple, Titus tore down the last remaining tower. In other words, the book is built in a great part to say that's the Fortress Antonia, which we call the Temple Mount. What I'm saying to you, the Fortress Antonia was as demolished as the temple. All right? So for the Jews, by demolishing the Tower of Antonia, had made their temple square. Well, because before it penetrated in. While at the same time, they had it written in their sacred oracles. This is going to be in Daniel 9:27. That then should their city be taken as well as their holy house when once their temple should become square. Okay? In other words, go back to the 500 cubits by 500 cubits. All right. I'll just leave these up here for a moment. This is from Wars 175. You see that originally the Antonia was a Hasmonean fortress. This never was a Roman fortress. It was built by the Hasmoneans called the Boris, in a place called formerly the Boris, though afterward its name was changed to the Antonia. And so again, let's go to the next one. And besides this, upon hearing Hyrcanus' complaint to his mother, she had compassion for his case. It puts Aristobulus' wife and sons under restraint in Antonia, which was a fortress that joined to the north part of the temple. It was, as I have already said of old, called the Boris, but later had the name of Antonia. So why am I making a point of this? Because they say in these books that it was built as a Roman fortress. It wasn't. It was built as a Jewish fortress, following Jewish methods and Jewish warfare. Later, it was changed by Herod, but it's still going to be a Jewish fortress. Okay? Again, these books are full of half-truths. One last thing that I want to just address. I don't have time to teach on it. I won't teach on this tomorrow. There has been quite a bit that you find in Cornuck's book about that there was a place where sacrifices were offered down in the city of David. And I have no doubt about that. What I have doubt about is that they were part of the temple of God. Remember that it was a Jebusite city, and that the Jebusites were Canaanites, And we already know that they participated in pagan worship. And so the archaeologists will not come out and say this is a Jebusite site or this is a temple site. They will leave it vague until there's a positive identification made for it. But the temple, you can only offer sacrifices at the temple, no other place. Temple cannot be in the city of David. The temple, I will show. Today, let's just leave it that perspective-wise, the temple is on the Temple Mount. Tomorrow, I'll be able to show you the hundreds of proofs that we know it was on the Temple Mount, and we know where distinct buildings were, the altar was, the Holy of Holies was, down to the 10th of an inch. Okay? Thank y'all. I appreciate it.